When they found a brass key around Marilyn Monroe's neck in 1962, it opened a storage locker filled with baby cribs, a wedding ring Joe DiMaggio carried for 8 years, and an entire life she'd kept hidden. This is the story of 3 days when Marilyn stopped being Marilyn Monroe and made the choice that haunted her until she told her psychiatrist. Every day I regret it, and not once. November 19th, 1953. Grauman's Chinese Theatre. The premiere of How to Marry a Millionaire. Marilyn was wearing emerald green silk that caught every camera flash. Fox had 300 photographers positioned along that carpet. This was the biggest premiere of the year, and Marilyn Monroe was the reason why. She was 27 years old and the most famous woman in America. She was also exhausted in ways that silk and diamonds couldn't hide. A studio assistant's face appeared at the window. "Miss Monroe, this just arrived. Western Union." They said it was important. Marilyn took the yellow envelope. Lauren Bacall was already on the carpet. Betty Grable was stepping out of her car. But Marilyn's fingers were already tearing the envelope open. 5 words on that telegram. Just 5. "I'm waiting. Please come home." No signature. It didn't need one. She knew the handwriting. Letters that didn't ask her to be Marilyn Monroe. Letters that called her Norma Jean. Letters from a man who'd watched her become the world's fantasy and decided he wanted the real woman instead. Joe DiMaggio. The crowd kept screaming, "Marilyn! Marilyn! Marilyn!" The radio announcer's voice carried over the chaos. "And here she is, folks, the girl every man wants and every woman wants to be." But Marilyn was staring at 5 words on yellow paper. "I'm waiting. Please come home." Home. Where was home? The apartment in Hollywood where she took pills to sleep and pills to wake up? Or Beach Street in San Francisco, where a man who'd once been the greatest baseball player alive was sitting alone? The assistant was getting nervous. "Miss Monroe, they're waiting." Marilyn studied the carpet. The telegram. The crowd that would never stop screaming. She closed the limousine door. "Tell them I'm not feeling well. Just drive." "Drive where, Miss Monroe?" "North," she said quietly. "Drive north." The car pulled up to Beach Street at 2 a.m. This was a working neighborhood. Modest buildings, laundry on fire escapes, a corner grocery selling bread and milk, not champagne. This was an honest life. Joe DiMaggio's apartment was on the 3rd floor. No elevator. Marilyn climbed the stairs in her premiere dress, each step taking her further from Hollywood. He was waiting at the door, still dressed. "You came," he said, like he'd been holding his breath. "You asked me to." The apartment was small, clean, 1 bedroom, a kitchen with a table for 2, and on that table, white cardboard containers from a Chinese restaurant. "I got dinner around 7, Joe said. "Figured you'd be hungry." Marilyn touched one of the containers, stone cold. He'd been waiting 7 hours. "Joe, I'm so sorry." "Don't be. You had your premiere, your big night." "But I left." "Why?" The apartment was quiet in ways Hollywood never was. Just a man regarding her like she was Norma Jean, not Marilyn. "Because you called me home," she whispered. "And I don't even know what that word means anymore." Joe took her hand. "I want to show you something." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a gold band, plain, no diamonds. "I bought this 3 weeks ago. Been carrying it around. Ask me what." "To marry me." "But not Hollywood weddings and magazine covers. I'm asking you to leave all of that. Come live here. Be Norma Jean DiMaggio. Wake up without makeup. Live like regular people live." Marilyn stared at the ring. "Joe, I don't know if I remember how." "That's okay. I'll teach you. I'm offering you a life where nobody's watching, where you can just be, and for the first time in years, she wondered if being Marilyn Monroe was worth what it cost. The house was in Mill Valley, 20 minutes north. Just a 3-bedroom house with white paint and blue shutters and a garden with tomatoes. And in the backyard, a swing set. For the kids we'd have, Joe said quietly. Marilyn felt something crack open inside her chest. Joe had been planning this. He'd already built it. The front door was unlocked. Hardwood floors that creaked. A fireplace. Windows looking out where kids rode bicycles. The kitchen was yellow. Bright, cheerful yellow. Joe had bought dishes. White with blue trim. We'd cook together, Joe said. I'd like to tell you about my mother's sauce recipe. We'd host Thanksgiving. You'd make pies. Marilyn laughed, a genuine laugh. I don't know how to make pies, Joe. I'd teach you everything. How to be normal, how to be happy. She walked through the bedrooms, small but cozy, one with wallpaper, one with bookshelves, and the third, the smallest, paint cans stacked in the corner. Pale green. For the nursery, he said. I thought pale green would work. For a boy or a girl. Marilyn traced her fingers along the wall, imagining a crib, imagining a child who would be wanted. She went to the back door. The garden, tomatoes on stakes, space for flowers, the swing set. She stepped outside. The air smelled like earth. She touched one of the swings. The metal was cold. The chain smelled like rust and rain. She sat down. She pushed off gently. The hinges screamed, a sound that hadn't been oiled yet. And for just a moment, she wasn't 27. She was 7, the foster kid nobody wanted. Joe came behind her, stopped the swing, knelt in front of her. The neighbors don't care about Hollywood. Mrs. Patterson teaches piano. Mr. Chen runs a hardware store. They'd know you as Norma Jean DiMaggio. They'd wave in the morning, bring casseroles. Normal life. What if I forget how to be her? Marilyn whispered. Marilyn Monroe. Joe took her hands. Then you tell me. We figure it out together. But Norma Jean, you'd never have to be Marilyn Monroe again. Marilyn touched his face and felt the weight of a choice she wasn't ready to make. A war was happening inside her, and she didn't know which side would win. Marilyn was 9 years old when she learned what home meant. Not her home, someone else's. Standing outside a foster house in Van Nuys on a December evening, watching through a lit window as a mother and daughter baked cookies. She'd pressed her hand against the glass, left a small print. Nobody inside saw her in the dark. That memory came back in Joe's garden. She was sitting on that swing set, and suddenly she wasn't Marilyn Monroe. She was Norma Jean Baker, the girl nobody wanted. 12 foster homes before she turned 16. 12 families took her in because the county paid them $11 a week. She'd learned not to unpack completely. I learned not to call anyone mom or dad. I learned to be quiet and pretty and not cause problems. Her birth. Mother was alive, but might as well have been a ghost. Gladys had her own struggles. The state took Norma Jean away when she was 7. For your own good, they'd said. But safe didn't mean love. Safe just meant alive and fed. That night, 9-year-old Norma Jean watched the mother adjust her daughter's apron. Watched them measure flour. I watched them laugh when they spilled sugar. And Norma Jean made a promise. Someday, she whispered, someday someone will want me. Someday I'll matter. Then she walked back to the foster house, where dinner was eaten in silence, where she learned to cry quietly. But that 9-year-old girl didn't know, that promise she'd made. Someday I'll matter. She'd kept it, but not the way she'd imagined. She'd kept it by becoming Marilyn Monroe, by making the whole world notice her, by becoming so extraordinary no one could ignore her. Joe's voice brought her back. Norma Jean, you okay? I spent my whole childhood watching other people have what I didn't, she said, always on the outside, and now you're offering me everything I wanted as that little girl. Joe took her hands. Then take it. But that was the problem. 9-year-old Norma Jean had wanted a home, but she'd also become Marilyn Monroe. And Marilyn Monroe wanted something bigger. She'd wanted to matter. And now she did. To millions. Joe was watching her face, the war inside her. He squeezed her hands, waiting. 3 hours later, Hollywood came knocking. If you're already feeling Marilyn's struggle between these two lives, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will break your heart. The studio executives are about to make her an offer she can't refuse, and you need to see how this impossible choice unfolds. They were back at Joe's apartment when someone knocked. Not a friendly knock. Charlie Feldman didn't wait to be invited in. Marilyn's agent pushed through with 3 men in expensive suits. Studio executives. "Charlie, what are you doing here?" "Saving your career." Charlie dropped a briefcase on Joe's table. I opened it. Contracts. "We heard you were thinking about retiring." "I never said that." "You left your premiere, disappeared for 36 hours. These gentlemen flew up to make sure you understand what you'd be walking away from." Joe stood. "You need to leave, now." The first executive stepped forward, Richard Zanuck. "Miss Monroe, we're prepared to offer $2 million for your next 3 pictures, more than any actress has ever been paid. You'd be the highest paid woman in the industry." $2 million. Marilyn felt the number hit her. More money than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. She'd grown up with nothing. $2 million was security, power, proof. The second executive moved closer. Martin Pierce. "And that's just the money. We're talking complete creative control, your choice of directors, approval over costumes, everything you've been fighting for." Joe moved between them. "I said leave. This is my home." "Please, Joe, Charlie," interrupted. "This is her future." Her future? Joe's face was red. Her future is what she decides. She's a human being, not a commodity. The third man spoke. Older, gentler. William Getz. "Miss Monroe, may I show you something?" He pulled a letter from his jacket. School notebook paper, childish handwriting. "This came yesterday, from a little girl in Ohio. Sarah Mitchell, 10 years old. Her teacher took the class to see Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Sarah wrote this." He held it out. Marilyn took it. "Dear Marilyn, my name is Sarah. I am 10. My mama says I can't be smart because I am too pretty. She says pretty girls don't need school, just husbands. But then I saw you in the movie. You were so pretty and so smart. You knew all those big words and nobody told you that you couldn't be those things just because you were pretty. Now when my mama says I don't need school, I tell her about you. I tell her, Marilyn Monroe is pretty and smart. So I can be too. Thank you for making me brave. Love, Sarah." Marilyn read it twice. Her vision was blurred. "That letter is one of thousands," Getz said. "Girls who see themselves in you." Charlie leaned forward. "You have millions of Sarahs. You walk away, you're walking away from them, from everyone who needs you to be Marilyn Monroe. She has a right to a private life," Joe said, "to be happy." Zanuck turned to Joe. "Miss Monroe isn't normal. She's exceptional, and exceptional people have responsibilities." Pierce cut in. "Miss Monroe, you're about to become bigger than anyone we've seen. We're talking about Oscar potential, legacy, immortality, everything you've worked for. All you have to do is sign. Everything she'd ever wanted." But was it? Holding a letter from a 10-year-old girl, Marilyn wasn't sure. The 9-year-old inside her wanted the yellow kitchen, but the woman she'd become wanted the roles and respect, not just to matter to one man, to everyone. Joe turned to the executives. "Get out! Get out!" Joe's voice cracked like thunder. "All of you." The executives gathered papers. Zanuck paused. "Miss Monroe, think about what you're giving up." Charlie stopped at the threshold. "You've worked too hard. Think about Sarah." Then he was gone. The apartment was quiet. Joe stood by the window, back to her. The contracts on his table. Sarah's letter in Marilyn's hand. "Tell me you're not considering this," Joe said. His voice was rough. "Joe, tell me." Marilyn studied the letter. "Thank you for making me brave." The contracts. Her name. Marilyn Monroe. Then Joe's back. This man who'd offered her everything that a 9-year-old wanted. Everything except what Marilyn Monroe needed. To matter to millions, not just one. So she asked for time. 3 days. Marilyn asked for 3 days. To live as if she'd already made the choice. No makeup. No Marilyn. Just Norma Jean trying on a future. By morning of the 3rd day, she'd have to answer. The contracts would expire. Joe said yes. The first morning they went grocery shopping. A little. Market on Clement Street, where nobody glanced twice. She pushed a cart, picked out tomatoes and bread. Joe showed her how to pick a good melon. The clerk smiled. You two newlyweds? Joe grinned. Working on it. Marilyn felt something warm spread through her chest. Belonging. That night, Joe taught her his mother's sauce. She stood at his stove in his mother's apron. Not too fast, he said. Everything needs time. The kitchen smelled like her childhood dreams. Marilyn laughed when she splattered sauce. A genuine laugh, the kind she'd forgotten she could make. They ate at his table. The sauce was good, not perfect, but Joe ate it like it was the finest meal ever. The next morning, Mrs. Chen brought homemade bread. Welcome to the building. She didn't ask for an autograph. I just smiled and left. Marilyn held that bread like gold. Someone had baked for her. Not for Marilyn Monroe, for Norma Jean. But later, she caught her reflection. Bare face, unstyled hair, just Norma Jean. Relief. Then I panic. Who was she without the platinum hair, without the red lipstick? If she let Marilyn Monroe go, would there be anything left? The second day felt heavier. They watched baseball. His Yankees are playing. She watched him more than the game, watching how he just existed. No performance, just Joe. Could she do that? Later, they read together. Joe with his newspaper, Marilyn with a novel. No scripts. But the silence felt too loud. She kept waiting for the world to remember she existed. By the 3rd morning, she felt like she was living inside a held breath. One more day before she'd have to choose. Joe took her to his favorite diner, Malone's on Geary Street. Red vinyl booths, jukebox playing Sinatra. They ordered burgers and milkshakes. Everything was ordinary, beautifully, perfectly ordinary. Marilyn wondered if that was enough, if ordinary would ever be enough for someone who'd spent years becoming extraordinary. Then a young woman approached their table. The spell shattered. And Marilyn felt the weight of her name settle back onto her shoulders. Her name was Betty Sullivan, and she was shaking. 19 years old, farm girl, eyes that still believed Hollywood was stardust. I'm so sorry to bother you, Betty said, but you're Marilyn Monroe. Joe's hand tightened on his coffee cup. We were just leaving. Please, Betty's voice cracked. Just let me say this. Joe glanced at Marilyn. He nodded. Betty set down her suitcase, pulled out a bus ticket stub. Greyhound, Cedar Rapids to Los Angeles. I came from Cedar Rapids, saved for 2 years, worked double shifts at my daddy's diner. Every tip went into a coffee can, because I had to get here. I had to try. Marilyn started to stand. Betty, please. Marilyn sat. Joe's hand found hers. Betty unfolded the ticket. Tucked inside was a photograph. Marilyn Monroe. Cut from a magazine, worn at the edges. This picture has been with me for 4 years, since I was 15. My mama found it and told me I was being foolish. She swallowed. My mama said girls like us don't end up in movies. Girls like us get married young and work the diner until our feet give out. She said dreaming was how you end up disappointed. What did you tell her? Marilyn asked. Betty looked directly at Marilyn, tears streaming. I told her you proved her wrong. The diner went quiet. Because of you, I believed a girl like me could matter. You made me believe beauty and brains could exist together, that being pretty didn't mean being stupid, that wanting more didn't make me ungrateful. Marilyn felt something shift, like a door opening. Everyone told me I was crazy. They said Hollywood chews girls up. But I kept staring at this picture, And I thought, Marilyn Monroe did it. She came from nothing. She was in foster homes. She was nobody. She became somebody. If she could do it, maybe I could too. Marilyn stood, crossed to Betty, put her hands on the girl's shoulders. What's your name? Betty. Betty Sullivan. I don't want an autograph, Betty whispered. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for being proof that girls like me can dream. Marilyn pulled Betty into a hug, the way she'd wanted someone to hug her at 15. You're going to be okay. You're going to try, and maybe you'll make it, and maybe you won't. But you're going to try, and that's what matters. Betty wiped her eyes. I have an audition tomorrow. Probably won't get it. One line. But I'm going to be brave, because you taught me that trying matters more than staying safe. She walked to the door, stopped, turned back. Miss Monroe, if I make it, I'm going to remember that you saw me, really saw me. Then she was gone. Joe paid. They walked to his car. Marilyn didn't speak for 6 blocks. Finally, Joe said what they both knew. She needed to see you. Not Norma Jean. She needed to see Marilyn. And Joe DiMaggio knew he'd just lost her. Because Marilyn Monroe mattered. Drop a comment right now. If you were Marilyn at that moment, what would you have chosen? Love and a quiet life? Or a chance to inspire millions? Because what she decides next will change everything. That night, Marilyn sat on the swing set while Joe waited on the porch. She held 2 things. In her left, the gold band. In her right, the contract. $2 million. 3 films. Everything. The November wind made the chains sing. The moon was full. A dog barked. Normal sounds. Marilyn tried on the ring, but it wouldn't go. It stuck at the knuckle. She pushed harder. It stopped halfway, like her body was resisting. She pulled it off. The ring hadn't changed. She had. She picked up the contract, read her name, Marilyn Monroe, the power women in Hollywood never got. She could smell Joe's aftershave on the wind, cedar and safety. Home. I can't compete with the whole world wanting you, Joe said from the porch. She looked at him, his face in shadow. I know. I thought I could. Though, if I loved you enough, that would be enough. But it's about who you are. I don't know who I am anymore. Yes, you do. Joe walked over, sat on the other swing. You're both. The little girl who wanted a home, and the woman who became Marilyn Monroe. And I don't think you can choose one without losing the other. Marilyn tried to swing. Too heavy. The swing barely moved. That little girl was watching through the window, she said. She didn't just want a home. She wanted to matter. She wanted someone to see her. I see you. I know. And I love you for it. But that girl grew up, and she decided if people weren't going to notice her for being good, she'd make them notice her for being extraordinary. And Marilyn matters. To girls like Betty. To women who need proof they can be beautiful and smart. To everyone who's ever felt invisible. Joe took her hand. I almost said yes, Marilyn said. She was crying. When you showed me this house. I opened my mouth to say it. I almost said yes. Why didn't you? Because I saw my reflection in your window, and I didn't recognize myself. Without the makeup and hair, I didn't know who I was. What if I give up Marilyn Monroe and there's nothing underneath? Joe kissed her knuckles. His eyes were wet. So this is your answer. I can't be Mrs. DiMaggio. Not because I don't love you. You're everything that 9-year-old wanted. But I love her too. I love Marilyn Monroe. I love what she represents. And if I give her up, I'm not just giving up fame. I'm giving up on myself. The self I built from nothing. Then you have to choose her. Even though it's breaking my heart, you have to choose her. Because she's who you are. It'll cost me you, maybe. Or maybe it costs us both everything we thought we wanted. The swing set creaked. The ring glinted. And Marilyn Monroe made the choice that would define her life. She stood, handed Joe the ring. "Keep it, in case I'm wrong." Joe closed his fingers around it, unable to speak. They stood in the backyard of a house she'd never lived in, beside a swing set her children would never use, and said goodbye. They married anyway. January 14th, 1954, City Hall in San Francisco. Marilyn wore a dark suit. Joe wore his best tie. No photographers, just two people trying to build a bridge. She'd be his wife, but she'd keep being Marilyn Monroe. Surely love could survive. For a while, they did. One morning Marilyn would never forget. March 7th, a Sunday. She'd woken before Joe, made coffee, standing at his stove in his Yankees shirt, scrambling eggs, when he wrapped his arms around her waist. "Good morning, Mrs. DiMaggio." She turned, kissed him, and for those minutes she wasn't Marilyn Monroe. It was perfect. They ate breakfast, read the newspaper, argued playfully about the Yankees. They were happy. But that afternoon, Charlie called. She had a meeting. The spell broke. Joe watched her transform. Something in his eyes dimmed. "Are you coming back tonight?" "I'll try." She didn't. 4 days in Los Angeles. When she came home, Joe was quiet. That was the first crack. They had 274 days. The fissures started small. Premieres, dinners with producers, magazine interviews about her marriage like it was a phase. Then came the 7-year itch. September 1954. The subway great scene. Joe flew to New York to surprise her. He stood in the crowd at 2 a.m. while 5,000 people watched his wife's film. They set up the wind machine. Marilyn stepped onto the grate in that white dress. The wind blew. The dress billowed. 5,000 people erupted, whistling, catcalling. The photographers went insane. Marilyn laughed, performed. 15 takes. 15 times thousands of men watched his wife's body be public property. Joe stood there, invisible, watching his wife become America's fantasy. When it wrapped, Marilyn found him. Exhausted, exhilarated. Wasn't that amazing? Joe looked at her. This woman he loved who was also a symbol he couldn't touch. "I'm going back to the hotel." "Joe, wait. I can't do this. I can't watch men look at my wife like she's something they can own. It's just a scene. It doesn't matter. They think you're theirs. That's my job. Then maybe I can't be married to your job." They fought that night, about what marriage meant, about whether she could be both his wife and America's fantasy. He'd asked her to quit, to choose him. She'd asked him to accept her, to love all of her. Neither could give the other what they needed. In October, divorce papers were filed. 274 days after they'd said, "I did." The marriage was over. But the love never ended. Joe sent roses to her resting place 3 times a week for 20 years. Never missed, never stopped. He kept sending roses because he understood something most people take a lifetime to learn. You can love someone completely and still not be able to live with them. He told a friend once. I understood who she was. I just couldn't live with sharing her. She belonged to too many people. I needed her to belong just to me. That was my failing, not hers. Marilyn told her psychiatrist about Mill Valley in 1961, about the yellow kitchen and swing set. The doctor asked if she regretted her decision. Marilyn smiled sadly. Every day, and not once. Because that was the truth. She regretted losing Joe, but she didn't regret becoming Marilyn Monroe. Both things were authentic. The question was never whether she made the right choice. The question was why she had to choose at all. If this story is hitting you right in the heart, share it with someone who's ever had to choose between two things they loved, because what they're about to discover in that storage locker will leave you speechless. When Marilyn passed in 1962, they found something unexpected. A small brass key on a chain around her neck, tucked beneath her clothes. It opened a storage locker in Mill Valley. Inside was furniture for a home that never existed. The yellow kitchen table, still wrapped. Time had stopped inside that locker. Gardening tools with tags attached, prices from 1953. children's books, Dr. Seuss, The Velveteen Rabbit, stories for babies she never had, 2 rocking chairs, a crib unassembled, and a handmade quilt, yellow and white, perfect for a nursery. She'd kept it all, paid the storage fee every month for 8 years, never told anyone. She'd kept that parallel life locked away like a secret heart. But there was more. Boxes of scripts, magazine covers, awards, newspaper clippings, letters from fans, hundreds of letters, from girls like Betty Sullivan who'd saved bus fare because Marilyn Monroe made them believe they could be more. She'd kept both lives, the one she chose and the one she dreamed about, because she wanted to be Marilyn Monroe. She wanted to be Norma Jean DiMaggio. And the tragedy wasn't choosing wrong. The tragedy was that the world told her she couldn't have both. Women of her era were told to pick career or family, ambition or love. Be the star or be the wife. Nobody asked if maybe a woman could want it all. Betty Sullivan, that girl from the diner, did make it in Hollywood. Small parts, but she worked steadily. Married a cameraman named Robert. I had 3 daughters, named the youngest Norma. And when people asked why, Betty would say, "Because a woman once showed me you could dream, even if dreams are complicated." Joe went to see Marilyn one last time, August 8th, 1962. He asked everyone to leave. He wanted to be alone with her. He knelt, took her hand, cold. He reached into his pocket, the gold band. He'd carried it for 8 years. He slipped it onto her finger. This time, it went on easily. People say he whispered something, but nobody knows what. Maybe goodbye. Maybe I understand. He kissed her forehead. I walked out and started ordering roses, 3 times a week, for 20 years. Years later, in 1989, a woman named Norma Sullivan brought her daughter to Los Angeles. 7 years old. They went to Grauman's Chinese Theater, where Marilyn's handprints were immortalized. The little girl knelt, placed her small hands in the prints. "Mama, who is she?" Norma smiled. "Someone brave. Someone who taught your grandmother that you don't have to choose just one dream. Someone who proved you could want it all, even if the world tells you that you can't." Was she happy? Norma thought about the woman who'd hugged a farm girl in a diner. I think she was happy and sad all at once, the way most brave people are, the way we all are when we choose to be ourselves. The little girl traced Marilyn's signature. "I want to be brave like her." "Then you will be," Norma said. "You will be, because that's what Marilyn Monroe left behind. Not just movies or fame, but permission. Permission for women to want more. Permission to be complicated. Permission to contain multitudes. Permission to choose themselves, even when it costs everything." She tried, for 274 days. And maybe that was enough. Maybe trying is all any of us can do when the world demands we split ourselves in half. Maybe the bravest thing Marilyn Monroe ever did wasn't become a star. It was refusing to apologize for wanting the yellow kitchen and the spotlight, for wanting the swing set and the Oscars, for wanting to matter to one person and to millions. She wanted it all, and the world told her she couldn't have it. But she tried anyway, and that, perhaps, is the genuine story. Marilyn's story deserves to be remembered. If it touched you, subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with someone who's ever felt torn between 2 lives, because her choice gave us all permission to be complicated, and that matters.